You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Okay, so it's Saturday the 15th of November. We are in London. We are 19 rows back from the very front, dead centre of Royal Albert Hall for the afternoon matinee screening of Star Wars The Force Awakens in concert. It's me, and obviously it's Mr. Newbold who sat next to me. And looking forward to seeing The Force Awakens, which is the first time I've seen it with a live orchestra. How about you?
I've never seen it with a live orchestra. I saw it earlier this year working on some site stuff. There's a fellow in front of us that looks a lot like Mark Hamill, but it isn't. The crowd's getting excited. We're about 5 minutes away from it all starting off. This is a bit special. It's feeling in really nice.
It's nice. It's the first Force Awakens concert that I've been to, like ever. I don't know when the last one was at Royal Albert Hall. It was a few years ago, however. Yeah, the orchestra is starting to take its seats, so hopefully any minute now we will get rolling.
So whilst we're here, before the copyright stuff starts kicking in, 10 years of The Force Awakens. Can you believe, first off, that it's 10 years? Because an awful lot has happened to Star Wars in that last 10 years.
Force Awakens doesn't feel like it's that old.
Not remotely.
It doesn't feel like it's that old in any stretch of imagination.
No.
There's a lot of mileage since the film came out in December.
Marvel had just taken over the comics.
Yep.
You know, the canon era had started with Rebels.
Yep.
This is the next thing after that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Disney Plus is still 4 years away at this point.
Yeah, we're still like, nobody even knows who the child is, really. I don't even think Jon Favreau does.
I don't think he did.
Well, let's settle back. Let's continue this chat after the screening.
Let's do it.
Because
I don't think it would be very popular if we continued this during the screening.
No, I mean, it would be interesting. I tell you what, it would be great audio commentary, wouldn't it? It'd be like actual
do a live commentary at the
do a
Albert Hall.
live audio commentary at the Albert Hall for Force Awakens.
It's the worst that could happen.
What exactly? Yeah. So we will catch you in a minute or two.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file.
That doesn't sound too hard.
Boom! This is Making Tracks.
This is the way.
Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
I know these people. They are brutal. Does this look Jedi to you?
That's not how the Force works.
They'll never see it coming.
Count me
Okay, back in the studio. And I think we've got quite a bit of news to get through, haven't we, Mark?
We've got loads of news to get through, and we're going to dive straight into it. The first one, though, actually, I think, is quite sad. Farthest From, it's been running since 2012, Dave Tree's event. It was the follow-on from his Fordingbridge Film and TV Festival that he ran for a couple of years, back in 2010 and 2011. Farthest From, it's on its 27th running, which will take place on the 6th of December next month. And Dave very kindly gave us a quote. And Dave said, when Farthest From first began, it arrived at a moment of major changes in the collector community. Traditional platforms like long-standing forums were giving way to emerging social media channels, and many collectors felt the ground shift beneath them. Farthest From offered a sense of belonging during this transition. It was a love letter to the toy fairs and gatherings of the pre-eBay 1990s, when collectors might travel for hours just to pack out a village hall full of vintage toys and memorabilia. Worth mentioning, Dave was part of a pre-eBay thing called Ultimart with Barry Eldridge, who was behind Celebration Europe, one of Dave's many claims to fame. In the decades since, the collector community has continued to evolve, its interests, habits and ways of connecting changing along with it. Today there are more collectors than ever, but there have been losses too, particularly the decline of genuine discovery in favour of the echo chamber-like recycling of the same information. To stay relevant and meaningful, Farthest From must evolve as well. Our recent And More event, along with the upcoming Fantha Maker, shows how this next chapter is already taking shape, and he wraps up to say, I'm deeply grateful to everyone who has supported and enjoyed Farthest From over the years. Together we've raised thousands for charities, local projects and community causes. Farthest From will continue, just in a new and exciting form. So that's it for Farthest From as a show at Fordingbridge Town Hall. But we don't know what's coming next, really, do we?
No. But in a rather Star Wars-y themed kind of way, no one's really ever gone. It will be back in some shape, way, or form, which is cool. Farthest From is renowned has got like a great reputation, and so is Dave for everything he's done in the community. So I'm sure whatever he moves on to, be it other kind of iterations of, say, Anmore or Fake for Manka, that will be well received and supported by the community. So yeah, let's see what happens. Let's see what the future may hold.
Exactly. Like you say, Dave has brought loads of great guests to the New Forest. Gus Lopez, Pablo Hidalgo, Gerald Home, Paul Bateman, Shane Turgeon, Neil Scanlon, Duncan Jenkins, Guy Henry, Steve Evans, Brian Herring, loads and loads more. Many more are coming, as he alludes to there, for Thank the Maker next month for the Force Awakens retrospective, looking at the making of that show, which we'll talk more about over the coming couple of weeks until that show. It's been a huge part of the UK scene. I wrote about it back on StarWars.com about 10, 11 years ago, about one of the early shows, back when you were allowed to write about stuff like that on StarWars.com. So I'm certainly going to miss the show. I think out of the 27, I've only missed 3.
That's a good batting average there.
It is when it's a 340-mile round trip.
That's the thing, Farthest From by name and Farthest From really by nature for a lot of people. What makes it unique is that it's tucked out down in the sleepy Hampshire village of Fordingbridge. And also it's in a very small kind of village hall, which, as Dave said, yeah, it's very much kind of like something that you'd see more in the 1990s. But, it's unique. It makes it more of a personal event. You can spend time talking to the traders who, actually engage with you and want to chat and find out more about you than just, take your money. So it's always been nice down there. Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. So Dave's not finished. There's loads more to come. Thank the Maker is now a huge focus for him. But we do say thank you and goodbye to Farthest From. Although, as we say, there is one more running to take place next month, which I'm sure will be fantastic. Pablo Hidalgo will be there. There's other people coming along as well. It's the Christmas meal as well on the evening. Then it's Thank the Maker the day after. But a show that is carrying on and will be back for its 18th running at Kingfisher Centre in Redditch is Echo Base Live. That will be back on Saturday, the 7th of March. That's always a great day, a great weekend. We've done a couple of walk-arounds. In fact, we did one at the last show.
We did. I had good fun at that last one. Didn't actually buy much.
You will at the next one, though, won't you?
I'll tell you what, I bloody well plan on spending a lot of money next one. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's busy. And I'm sure if anybody's actually tried to listen to our Making Tracks lives from Echo Live, it's always a little bit chaotic. The hours are quite crammed and, everything's tightly packed into the area, but that makes it fun. And there's always a little gem or something that you either haven't thought about for 20 or 30 years or more, that you've never seen before. And the prices are reasonable. And so it's a good day out.
It is. And some places are crammed through bad planning and some places are crammed because they're full of really good stuff and good people.
Absolutely.
And Echo Live is definitely one of those, isn't it?
100%. And also you got the Evening with the Stars the night before, which is always a fun little event. Well, I know I'm going to be there this year, so I'm sure hopefully you will be as well.
I can tell you, Mark, literally before we started recording, I paid for my meal, so I will be there.
Oh, good lad.
Hopefully we're on the same table.
Fingers crossed.
Speaking of things continuing and ending, or maybe and maybe not, something that's definitely ending is Star Wars Insider magazine. It's been going in various formats since 1978 when it was the original Star Wars Fan Club magazine. It became Fantha Tracks, it became the Lucasfilm magazine, and in 1994 became Star Wars Insider magazine. It's gone through a number of different publishers, and it will finish its run with issue 237, which will be out next year. What are your thoughts? Obviously, I've got thoughts, but what are your thoughts on Insider coming to an end?
It's mixed, actually. On one hand, it feels slightly inevitable that, the way, news and print media is going. Ultimately, if there's a lot of love and time, and that's, because you write many articles for the issues, goes into those articles. So therefore, the days of long gone where, you have to wait for the postman to deliver it to get your Star Wars news. Now you just literally open up your phone and it's all there, or social media, emails. So the world of news gathering has completely dramatically changed. I mean, it's even changed dramatically since you started Lightsaber.
Yeah.
So on one hand, you kind of go, it's a shame, because it's a legacy brand and part of Star Wars. The members of the Star Wars community of a certain age, I mean, even people younger than me as well. I mean, I used to get excited every Wednesday when Kerrang magazine came out.
Same.
And then when the Star Wars Insider came to my door. Now, on the flip side, and this is why I say it's mixed, it's like I stopped buying or subscribing to Insider probably just after, or maybe even just before, the Rise of Skywalker. I mean, it was just because, I didn't really see the need to have it. I mean, I've got many of the kind of collected editions and the collector's editions and stuff, which are great in their own right. And there's a lot of information in there if you can go back and review them and find some of the articles. So it's a sad thing. There's obviously reasons why Star Wars or Lucasfilm felt that it's either not needed, or was it a Lucasfilm thing, or was it the actual publisher?
I don't know. I mean, it's Titan's last issues of Insider. I mean, the article on StarWars.com sort of does say a few times it's Titan's last one. Chris Cooper, the editor over at Insider, he says Insider's been a big part of my Star Wars experience for a very long time, both as a fan and professionally. And it's been an honour to explore the galaxy far, far away with our readers during my 8-year tenure. I can't believe it's 8 years. But publishing has changed measurably since the Lucasfilm Fan Club magazine, and we live in an increasingly digital age, which sadly means that this chapter in Star Wars Insider's history is coming to an end. And I think the way Chris phrases that is important. Maybe there's a future for it in the way that Dave just talked about Farthest From evolving. Maybe this is Star Wars Insider evolving. But as we say, issue 237, which will be out early next year, will be the last one. I'm not giving any trade secrets by saying I'm working on stuff for 236 and 237, and have every intention, along with the other writers and Chris and everybody at Titan and obviously Lucasfilm, to give the magazine as best a send off as possible. Yeah, it's going to be weird. It's been, for me, speaking completely selfishly, it's been part of my daily routine for quite a long time now, sort of 10, 12 years regularly. And a few years before that, more sporadically. But yeah, I think it's going to be missed on shelves, on bookshelves, in collections. It's something that people can sort of trace. As you say, you can trace a lineage, and there's a history, which is very important to Star Wars.
Obviously, I don't want to put you on the spot, and obviously, if you can't say anything, don't say anything. But do you reckon maybe this could go online, like make it a digital thing? Could it replace the long finished like Star Wars show? Because again, like there's kind of a gap in the official Lucasfilm Star Wars arena for something to take the Star Wars Insider brand name, as it were, and put on digitally, either website or just on social media.
That's a great question. I mean, if I knew, I couldn't say, but I don't know, so I can't say, but I can.
But you can speculate
like anybody else. Exactly. Yeah. I think the name has got value. It's got to have value because it's been around so long. Brian said this on Good Morning Tatooine with Paul. There was a Star Wars show, and there was This Week in Star Wars, and they're not happening now. And then you had Insider, which was an official publication, that was giving you information. And obviously, as you've said, the immediacy of social media and everything else, news isn't news in the way that it used to be news. You could learn something brand new in Insider. But nevertheless, if they wanted to bring back some sort of Star Wars online TV show, what a great name, Star Wars Insider. Yeah. There's an option there. This face ain't pretty enough for Star Wars Insider on television or on YouTube, but, there's people who could do a great job with that. Yeah. Or conversely, in the same way that Fantha Tracks became a part of Star Wars Insider, Mary Franklin was running Fantha Tracks and Pete Vilmer took over from her in the magazine, that there's maybe a place for that because Kristin Baver was doing from the desk of StarWars.com in Star Wars Insider. So there is overlap between all of these little elements. So you could be right. There could be somewhere where the brand name of Star Wars Insider continues. But as we say, for now, as a print magazine from Titan Magazines, it's near the end of its run. 235, I think, is either out now or very, very soon. And then we've got, as I say, 236 and 237.
Hi, this is Andy Seacombe, otherwise known as Watto, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
So the latest issue of Empire magazine, it is out as we speak. And speaking inside the page is Jon Favreau, who obviously directed The Mandalorian Grogu, which is out on Friday the 22nd of May next year. Did give a few snippets and a bit of insight. Here's what he said. He said, The Mandalorian has changed his priorities. One of the last things we saw in season 3 was him saying, I don't want to go out there and just be a hired gun. I want to work for the good guys. That means receiving work from Sigourney Weaver's Colonel Ward and working with Zeb, who we obviously know from Star Wars Rebels. And Favreau continues to say, now we get to really have fun with him. He's such a compelling character, even if you've never seen Rebels, between the voice, the swagger, and the physical ability. So that hints that we're going to see plenty of Zeb. And then he continues, that central relationship as they go off and face adventure together, that's the underpinning of the film. Star Wars is always about progression and growth and characters evolving, sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. It's about apprenticeship. It's about one generation teaching the next. There's more growth that happens over the course of the film. So he's not giving a lot away other than we're going to see plenty of Zeb and that it feels like it's a classic Mando and Grogu adventure. But what do you make of that? I mean, where do you sit with it right now? We keep picking up little snippets. It's edging closer. We're sort of 180 something days away from it coming out. But what's the vibe as these little elements keep coming in?
It's interesting. They're kind of starting to feed some of the, I guess, the themes that we're expected to see, which I guess, to be honest, you couldn't pick up from a trailer because it just looked, visually stunning, but there wasn't really any meat on it to kind of tell you much about it. And it's great that we're definitely getting more of Zeb because, it was literally like a couple of cameo shots in the last season of Mando. So that's fantastic. I guess the generational thing, that'll be interesting. Maybe it's the handoff of older, let's say, rebellion era fighters who maybe teaching the younger kids how to protect the galaxy or something like that. And also, obviously, with Grogu, he's kind of multi-generational anyway. How that would work? Where do you think we're going to see the focus? Is it going to be more on Grogu's story, or have we basically had that, and is he now just going to be the sidekick for the Mandalorian for this film?
That's a tricky one because Favreau does sort of allude to Mando. Oh, I mean, he says it, that he wants to be more aligned with what the New Republic's doing rather than aligning himself with the underworld, which has kind of turned and kicked him in the crotch, or any sort of nascent return of the Empire. He's not interested in any of that. He's not a bounty hunter in the traditional go where the money leads you sense.
No.
He has his moral code. That Mandalorian code, weirdly, has turned out to be a very good and a very positive thing. It's certainly helped Grogu. So he's invested, as we see quickly, he invests a lot in that character, into Grogu, even before he even knows his name's Grogu. So I think you'll see a lot of focus on that. I'd like to think we'll see more flashbacks to Grogu's past because that does feel like... I don't know whether we're going to get a season 4. I think I'm sort of split in thinking, will we get a season 4? Is this essentially
season 4? Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to... We don't need to know, but it's the Mandalorian era, isn't it? And there's not books and comics spinning off from this. What you know of this era and these characters is purely what you see on the screen. So if you don't see it in this film, you're going to have to wait for a season 4 or another series that will, like a Book of Boba or an Ahsoka, that might overlap and give you elements. So obviously we've got Ahsoka season 2, but that's... I wouldn't rely on that to be telling us these kind of stories. So I don't know. My gut tells me it's a pure, straight down the line action adventure. I don't know what the crux of it is. We know where Din has thrown his lot in with. He's with the New Republic. But what the specific focus is, whether it ties in with Ahsoka because of Thrawn or who the big bad is or how it's going to play, I don't know. I'm excited to find out, though.
I kind of have always felt that through The Mandalorian, it would act as a kind of a link and a bridge to the sequel trilogy and maybe help to build some of that connective tissues that creates the sense of foreboding of like what the First Order is. There is a part of me that still hopes that would happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, it's like, do you put it into this or do you just put some subtle hints that, we pick up on, but maybe they don't actually, realize, the relevance or importance of maybe what they're seeing? Favreau and Filoni have got the knack and the skill to be able to, on one hand, just do a good action adventure with some laughs and high moments and some, sadder moments. But then I also think they've definitely got the talent that they could weave some of this in so that actually those who are more engaged and clued into the Star Wars galaxy could maybe pick up more off it. And that would then make it multi-dimensional, which is going to just obviously help in the box office as well, you'd hope.
The quick thought that comes to mind is the whole run to Exegol, somehow Palpatine returned kind of stuff. We've got to be pushing a decade in the timeline, and I'm never quite sure exactly where in the timeline Mando is in relation to Jedi, but you've got to be a decade, near enough a decade on. And we don't know how much further out this film is. We're assuming it's like the next season, the next year, whatever. This could be 5 years later for all we know. This could be like Indy coming out of retirement for one last ride. We don't know.
Yeah.
So what you say makes sense. We could start to learn about what's happening out in the unknown regions and what's happening on Exegol, and somehow Palpatine returned. Well, maybe now we're going to find out what Palpatine was doing with the whole Snoke thing and how that all got moving forward, because we had Luke in Book of Boba, and Mando met Luke, and there's all these overlaps now with different characters, that there is the potential for these things to sort of not infiltrate, but sort of seed into each other and start to interweave, which will, as you just said, satisfy a lot more people. It's a broader stroke, isn't it?
Absolutely. Maybe Favreau and Filoni don't know if this is like the end of The Mandalorian and Grogu as a series, or actually, does it come back? Do we get a season 4, technically season 5 of Mandalorian? It's actually now called The Mandalorian and Grogu, and that's their kind of like title and vehicle from now on. Because you'd think there would get to a point whereby either Filoni and Favreau are kind of like, do you know what, we've told all the stories we wanted to tell.
Yeah.
But rather than go, oh, no. All you ancillary writers and creators and that, you still can't touch it, would kind of maybe allow for some of these stories to maybe kind of start to seep into, say, Marvel Comics or a book or something. You know, we've just had Adam Christopher's Amazing Master of Evil released the other day. I just got that. There's not a huge amount going on in the publishing world at the moment. You know, High Republic's finished. We haven't really had many books. They've really moved away from, you know, for Skywalker saga characters in, you know, storytelling quite a lot. There's definitely kind of these gaps which could be kind of filled with more Mando and Grogu kind of stories in literature.
And also, you wonder whether or not Favreau and Filoni specifically want the Mando and Grogu storyline to be what it is. You know, the focus on Grogu, the focus on Mando protecting Grogu, and being involved with the sort of the restoration of Mandalore, or will he become a more significant character in the broader galactic sense? Will he get involved in things like that? You can see Bo-Katan being a more important character because Mandalore is a big deal and a decent sized chunk of a certain part of the galaxy. So her story is important when you think of who she's succeeding, you know, in the longer term, her sister and everything else. So there's elements that interweave with other stories there. But also, would or could Mando be or become like, I'm picking off the top of my head examples, a character like a Cassian Andor, who starts off as a bit of a wrong-un, to be honest, and actually couldn't come more good and makes it a sacrifice. Not that I'd want to see Mando do a similar thing, because people would just say they've just done the Andor thing here.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But if he becomes more of an interwoven character, it's a bit like if Han Solo is introduced into the Star Wars story after we've already seen Solo, a Star Wars story, and other, you know, Han Solo adventures, and then he meets Luke and Ben in the cantina on Tatooine. And you already know who Han Solo is. We learned all of Han's history, a lot of it fairly quickly, but retrospectively. But if you go in knowing that, you know, and now you've got a character like Din, like the Mandalorian, with the rep and with the honor of doing what he's done with Grogu, and then he becomes a character of significance within the broader story of the galaxy, that could be really interesting.
Yeah, no, it really could. I mean, I would love for him to do something ballsy and actually have him maybe kind of become like the next Fulcrum, tie it into the Resistance. He's out there in the galaxy. He's reporting back to Leia. And actually, when I say ballsy, I mean, like, let's see a live action, like, new version of Princess Leia. You know, something like that, just to kind of go, he has got significance. I mean, because the problem is, with respects to Mando, he can go off and do 20 wonderful things. Just go and blow up some ships and what have you, save loads of planets. But I think the fly in the ointment is Grogu, because he has the potential to be like uber powerful if we're comparing him to Yoda. Does he ever reach his potential? What does that mean to the galaxy, for the galaxy? But then also, again, it's that whole thing like, if somehow Palpatine returns, you would think that something like that would call to Grogu to go and fight the good fight and not just stay counting frog eggs or something on Navarro. So it's a dangerous thing, isn't he? Because like, we kind of saw it a little bit at the end of the Book of Boba Fett. He's a little bit OP. He's a little bit overpowered, really, in the grand scheme of things. He's like the trump card or the card that you pull out into the back. You know, that's a problem and the danger with having somebody like that. It's one reason JJ didn't know what to do with Luke Skywalker, so he just stuck him at the end of The Force Awakens, because it's like the moment he's there, everything should be solved because he's Luke freaking Skywalker. Kind of the same with Grogu, really. You know, he's freaking Grogu.
And don't you think as well, Filoni must have deja vu, because when you look at the original trilogy, or more specifically the prequel trilogy, and all the things that are happening there, and you never, obviously, because she wasn't created as a character at this point, you never see Ahsoka. She's never mentioned, she's not seen. She's there, but she's not. Yeah. Even in season 7 of the Clone Wars, it's all happening. There's interaction, but we don't see it in the film, but we do see it in season 7. So there's all these things that are happening concurrently that don't quite overlap in the big screen sense, let's say. And now here we are again with a character like Grogu, and you think all the stuff that's happening in the sequel trilogy, Force Awakens, which we saw last weekend on the big screen, you know, there's the flashback with Luke and R2 at the temple after it's been destroyed, which we learn a lot more about in The Last Jedi. Now we know what we know about Grogu, and we see the stuff we see in Book of Boba Fett with Ahsoka and Luke training him as well. It's like, well, is Grogu there? Is Grogu one of the students that dies? And if he's not, why is he not there? So there's lots and lots of questions. Is there more than one academy? Is Luke doing one and Grogu doing one? You know, somebody made a great point about Chewbacca and Han Solo in relation to Han Solo. And to Chewie, Han is like when we own a dog, and a dog will last 10, 12 years.
Right,
Chewie's
exactly.
200 years old at the time of Star Wars, and he's still around 30, 40 years later in rude health. To Grogu, he's still a kid. Even when the sequel trilogy is happening, compared to, look at Yoda's age. We don't know whether Yoda was particularly old for his species, so you think Grogu could be the same?
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
So it's still filming at Pinewood and other studios and locations around this planet, and it is Star Wars Starfighter. It's out on the 28th of May 2027, which is just 3 days into the second half century of Star Wars. Ryan Gosling stars in it. It's directed by Shawn Levy, who's done some fantastic stuff. And talking on the promotional tour for Stranger Things Season 5, of which he is also a part, he did talk about Starfighter a little bit, and he wouldn't refer to it as a prequel or a sequel. Here's what he said. He said, for one thing, it is different in that it is an all-new, non-sequel, non-prequel adventure. It's new characters, it's a new timeline, it inherits legacy themes, but it's really trying to give Star Wars and movie audiences something fresh, something new, and with a spirit of play and big-hearted adventure with moments of real levity that, frankly, A New Hope had in a revolutionary way. It's a nice way of putting it. We're really trying to sort of take that tone as our North Star every day. My crew, my DP, Claudia Miranda, Gosling is my kind of central collaborator in the lead role. It's been a dream come true. My 10-year-old self is on set with me every day. In fact, he's going to catch a flight tonight to go back to the set and keep shooting on Monday. But it's a huge, invigorating opportunity because Lucasfilm have been so encouraging of me doing something new. There's no pressure to be derivative or limited by an obligation to what came before. There's just a love of what came before. So he's highly influenced by Star Wars. It's set in the Star Wars galaxy. It's not a prequel. It's not a sequel. But of course, Mark, it is a prequel and it is a sequel because that's how Star Wars works. But what he says, what he's getting at basically, is very encouraging, isn't it? It feels like a new era is about to begin for Star Wars.
Exactly. If it's set, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years after Rise of Skywalker, then great. But it doesn't make it a sequel just because it's set in the same universe. If there's no character overlap, and it would be quite interesting to actually, for the first time, have no existing characters, none, no legacy characters, no Chewbacca, no R2, 3PO, or I'm even thinking back to I suppose with Rogue One, kind of a similar kind of sense was pretty close, but we had Vader in it and it was set in that time period. Yeah. But this is the galaxy you assume is in a complete and utter mess. We don't know what's happening there, but also the way Sean's talking is also that this won't necessarily need to be a big epic. This could feel quite intrinsically small, focusing on a couple of characters. Not character studies, but like a character adventure. Something maybe a bit more like Skeleton Crew, in that it's just happening in the galaxy and everything else is going on around it and it doesn't impact it. I'm really excited. And I heard Shawn Levy talk I think it was in that interview, and what is so exciting is just the passion that comes across when he's talking about it and the enthusiasm he has for Star Wars. So that in itself is exciting.
Absolutely. And it does feel like we are stepping into a new tone for Star Wars, because over on Mandalorian and Grogu, Sigourney Weaver said something that's kind of similar when talking about it in the next issue of Empire. She said, what's interesting about Star Wars now is they're no longer trying to do the Star Wars to end all Star Wars. They're letting the universe exist and telling really interesting stories within that, which very much seems to speak to what Shawn Levy's saying here, that we've got new characters and new situations. You think Star Wars, characters and situations by George Lucas, that was the one thing you knew from the books, from everything that you read as a kid, that he built the sandbox. Now we're getting past the Skywalker saga. It feels like Lucasfilm have sort of thought, right, we have the sandbox and we've had the Skywalker saga. Now let's tell exciting adventures set within this galaxy, because we can go to new places. We can tap into familiar places. We can drop in familiar face if we want to. You've got characters like Mando and Solo and people who travel all around the place. And we know as Star Wars fans, there's only 1,000 people live in the Star Wars galaxy anyway, so they're all going to meet each other. So you can have that if you want it, but also to think that we're in this new era, that all the events have happened. So you're right. I'm right in that it is a sequel, but you're also right in that it's not, because it's not picking up what happened at the end of The Rise of Skywalker, but it will be informed by what we saw in that.
Absolutely.
And that is refreshing.
I suppose it's like a whole thing, isn't it? Like in a single continuous timeline, everything will either be a prequel or a sequel. I guess it's how you define what that prequel and sequel actually is.
Oh, totally. Because, it's how pedantic you want to be.
Totally, right? And I mean, Star Wars fans, we can be pretty freaking pedantic.
I'm looking at one and so are you.
And I like this idea that actually, they're not just trying to top the last Star Wars. So hopefully that means that we move away from lines like, they fly now? They fly now? They fly now. Or even somehow Palpatine return. And that's no shade on Rise of Skywalker whatsoever. It's just, it always feels like it's the battle of trying to be as toyetic as possible and produce the best potentials for Hasbro as well. And I'm sure we will get like a new Razor Crest and everything else, or Razor Crest 2 or whatever they want to call it. And I like that kind of approach. It's like, tell good, solid stories. Let the spectacle be what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And just let the audience have fun. And I'm sure if they have fun and it looks like their actors are having fun on set, then we're going to carry on and be taken for the ride, which is all that we want.
Let's hope we're not literally taken for a ride, but I totally take your point. You did actually mention Oscar Isaac in there, and this weekend at Liverpool Comic Con, John Boyega was on stage with Eunice Suetamo. The interview was recorded by Matt Booker. It is now up on Fantha Tracks TV if you want to watch it. And in there, Boyega was asked, obviously, about Star Wars, and he did say that he would like to come back, but only on the big screen. He says, me and Oscar are very stubborn, and we believe the bromance should only be on the big screen. It has to be a movie and obviously a great script. And I've always spoken to Eunice today and said, Eunice, you must join Poe and Finn on their adventure. So if I get those combinations, who knows? So he said it a few times and he said it again within the last couple of days. He's open to it. That's great news. He's obviously speaking to Oscar. He's open to it. That's also great news. And we're going to get Chewie back if Eunice is available, because he's a busy fella as well. So the stars are kind of lining up. But my thought on that is, as you just said, one of the things that The Rise of Skywalker had a real problem with was the fact that expositionally they had to do somehow Palpatine's returned and things like that. And one of the curses, I think, of Star Wars is that you've got the wonderful opportunity to tell stories in different arenas, like books and comics and everything else, because everything counts. But by the same token, if that's the only way you can tell the story and not do a Basil exposition or a flashback or a spin-off TV series or whatever to explain things like Palpatine returning, people are going to feel shortchanged. So they really are caught between two stools, aren't they?
Very much so. It comes down to the storytelling. It comes down to maybe what does or doesn't happen in the story group meetings. But you would think that, at least for me anyway, I would be like, right, okay, we're moving into a new era of Star Wars. What does that mean for the franchise? Potentially, where do we want this to go? It doesn't need to go there in the first or the second movie, but maybe the fourth or the fifth movie, then we need to be heading somewhere. Maybe what the franchise needs as a bit of a palate cleanser is just a series of standalone movies that are just adventures. Just literally like you've just opened up a Marvel one shot. Okay, great. Poe and Finn and Chewie. Hell, let's get Zori Bliss back in it because it's Carrie Russell and she's amazing at the moment. So let's do that. And then we could just have some fun Babu Fricks there. And okay, so now we're starting to pull in like characters from sequel trilogy. But also what that might start to do as we move further into 2030s and beyond that, is suddenly people will be like, oh yeah, I really like that Rise of Skywalker. Me and you are sat at Force Awakens, and it's evident like the sheer, I suppose you say, magnetism and just like star power like Adam Driver has. And charisma like John Boyega has when he's on set, and the energy. And I think if you can capture that energy, he's still got that kind of boyish charm. Obviously, like Oscar Isaac is that little bit older, but then he can kind of like, he can be that little bit more experienced. There's loads of places they could go with it, without even having to say, oh, it's going to be a story about Finn and Poe going off to find refugees or something. They could literally just find a map.
Am I right in remembering that at the end of 9, Finn and Poe are both generals, like at the end of 6, Han and Lando are generals, aren't they?
Exactly. So, whether or not, that's the thing is like, do you want to tie these characters down to like reform in the New Republic and trying to battle just to get the very soul of the New Republic, or do you want to just go, hey guys, why don't you just go and take on some pirates or just go and have some fun?
Go and join Dr. Aphra on an archaeological dig and see what happens.
Yes. Go to Nar Shaddaa for a weekend or whatever the Star Wars equivalent of Riser is.
Hi, this is Guy Henry and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. Enjoy.
A couple of weekends ago, I had the good fortune to go to Surrey to the Smugglers Star Wars weekend. There were 35 guests. We've interviewed about 20 of them. The first one that we shall play is my chat with Koo Stark. I've wanted to talk to Koo Stark for years, and finally, so to speak, I caught her. So this is me sitting down and having a quick chat with Koo Stark at Star Wars Smugglers weekend in Surrey.
So we're here at Smugglers in Surrey. I'm here with Koo. How are you, and how's the day going so far?
It's a wonderful day. We're very busy this morning, and it's just lovely to see everyone, all the fans. It's very nice.
Do you do many events?
No, this is the second one.
The second one? In all the time?
I believe so, wow. Yes, yeah.
So how has it been? Because you filmed in 76.
Yeah.
That's a chunk of time away.
It is.
A lot of time has passed since it, and you come back and talking about the character. I've been watching you talk to various people about it. How has it felt to sort of reacquaint yourself in a way with the character?
Well, the memories are lovely. It's not so much the character as the experience of being there in Tunisia filming with everyone. I mean, I have lovely memories of being there, and it was a real. It was a unique experience. I think it was very. Tunisia itself is a place like no other. And then I remember I was probably the youngest on the set at the time, and Alec Guinness was the oldest. And he was very kind. I remember particularly experiences with Alec Guinness and Harrison Ford. Mark as well was very sweet. Everybody was sweet and lovely. And Carrie and I kept in touch for a number of years afterwards. So when she would come to London, I would, I would get a message from her usually. Where's the party? What's happening? So it was fun, to make some. And of course, Anthony's was still friends. So it was lovely, it was a lovely experience. Everyone was very nice.
When the film came out, George had that big hit with American Graffiti, so he wasn't an unknown, but in the realms of doing a big sort of science fiction, science fantasy film like this, that was kind of uncharted territory. What were your expectations, and given that obviously you were a young actress at the time, but what were your expectations for what this would become?
Absolutely none. So I went up to see George for a casting call to replace Carrie, basically. She hadn't signed her contract. So he called a casting agent, Irene Lamb, and said, we're looking for American Princess. So there were a number of actresses came up, and I was given the script. George said, take the script home and I'll see you in Tunisia if you're free. That's, when we're starting. So that evening I got a call saying, sorry, but obviously Carrie's agent in LA had heard that he was recasting, so Carrie signed the contract. And I said, oh well. And he said, no, I want to work with you, come out anyway. And I said, but George, I've just read the script. There is really no other part, really. He said, doesn't matter, we'll, figure something out. So I was Camie then, and we basically improvised. So that scene that hit the cutting room floor was an improvised scene, and it was fun. I have to say, it was lovely and it was fun, and I was very glad I went there.
It's strange in that, as you say, it wasn't in the final cut, but it's become so infamous. You're arguably the most well-known person from any film that's not in the film, if that makes any sense.
Not in Star Wars, exactly. Exactly. No, I think it's the effect that this film has had on the fans has been really amazing, and it's really heartwarming as well, because it's a nice story that is not, that is still gone on for generations now, 2 generations really. And I mean, today, for instance, I saw children dressed up in Star Wars costumes, and that's just, how can I say, it's heartwarming. It's like being part of a family, multi-generational family. And everything is so wholesome, really. So it's a real pleasure to have been associated with Star Wars, even though it didn't, I wasn't in the film. I'm still remembered by the fans, so that is so nice. It's lovely.
We say this to people all the time, there are no small roles in Star Wars, but yours, like you say, it's taken on almost a myth of its own. It's kind of brilliant, really.
That's interesting. This is like family stories, isn't it? So when you're a little person, and you go to the bigger people in your family group and you say, what was it like then? What was it like, before I was born? What were the stories of you growing up? Or, and you ask your parents and you ask your grandparents and you start getting the family history. And I feel like that's what it's like I'm telling, I'm the granny telling what it was like way back when, to the children today. So it is nice. There's a certain continuum which is comforting. Yeah, it's very nice.
That's wonderful. I wanted to speak to you forever, so thank you so much for this.
My pleasure.
So we're back in the car. Well, we're going to go for a nice evening meal. So what did you make of that, Mark? How good was that?
That was so cool. Like we said before we went in, 10th anniversary year, seeing it in a room full of people. And to anybody who says the sequel trilogy isn't popular, can I just direct you to 4,000 people filling the Albert Hall twice in a day.
Yeah.
Standing ovations. Every time a character turned up, there was applause. R2 got applause. Han got applause. Leia got applause. Everyone, 3PO got so many laughs. You forget.
Yeah.
Actually, when you watch these films these days, I'm sure it's the same for you, you tend to watch it on your own because doing what we do as Star Wars fans, it's kind of part of our daily fabric. Mm-hmm. And so we'll put on one of these films in the background just when we're working on stuff or thinking about stuff.
Yep.
And so generally you watch it on your own. To watch it in a room, not only with a friend like yourself, but with all these other people who you don't know, and they're laughing and enjoying it, they're getting the jokes, they're understanding the humour. I think it really reminds you actually what a funny film Force Awakens is.
Yeah, it really is. And I've always said, and I maintain this, I kind of actually had to remind myself to look down and look at the orchestra because I was so caught up and enraptured with the film, but also the sound quality just sounded so good. It almost sounded like as if I had the Blu-ray, which is kind of amazingly crazy. I've always said, and this kind of did remind me that Force Awakens does very much feel like a film of two halves. The first half kind of feels slightly slower, and then you've got that second half really kind of from the moment that Rey's been captured by Kylo, that it kind of ramps up and
the pace picks up.
The pace picks up, but also I think the humour kind of picks up as well. You've got some funny moments on the freighter with Han and Chewie and that, but the interplay between Han, Chewie and Finn on Starkiller Base is very funny, I don't know if that was the case or not, but it almost feels like the second half was slightly written by maybe somebody else. It's definitely tonally got a slightly different feel to it.
Well, the first half does all the setting up, doesn't it? It introduces you to Rey, it shows you Jakku, which is a key planet, not just in this film, but just in Star Wars nowadays anyway, because of the importance of it. So it does does a beautiful job of doing all of that. It just eases you into the era. You kind of know enough. Kylo speaking to Vader's helmet, the connections between the characters, the familial connections. They don't keep it a secret for long that Ben is Kylo, who is Han and Leia's son, who is the nephew of Luke. It's known, it's out there. They don't sit on that for too long. I like that.
Yeah.
There's certain character connections. Well, look at the OT, which of course was kind of made up on the fly. And one of the criticisms that we would have of the sequel trilogy is, I wish they'd thought it all through before they made it.
Yeah.
And yet you look at Star Wars Empire and Jedi and they're making it up as they go along. But the difference is there was no Star Wars before Star Wars Empire and Jedi.
Exactly.
You can do it in that instance, but the others different, not so much. But yeah, just like you say, it was such an impressive film. It sits easily alongside the others.
The scale of everything. Suddenly, you've got a little scavenger who's working on what's looks like a big piece of machinery, and then you pull out and it's 1/5 of a percent of the size of a Star Destroyer engine, and she lives in a falling down Atta, and so you have this kind of sense of scale straight away. And also actually what's quite nice, and sometimes you look at some of the Star Wars we've begun recently, slightly different world building, but you look at Jakku, just how kind of sparse it is again. Like, it's very Tatooine. It's meant to evoke that.
Totally. And you think in another world, if they could have made that Tatooine if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Or like the Hosnian Prime could have been Coruscant.
Yeah.
You know, there's just, but there's only so many, there's a galactic architecture. There's only so many locations you can kind of evoke. If you go to any forest world, you're thinking Endor. So that's completely understandable.
The positives with The Force Awakens, I think personally, is the fact that actually it does sometimes feel like the greatest hits of Star Wars, which is also can be argued as being some of the negatives of the film as well. But it does feel like it's just there to kind of remind everybody. But really, I can't really find any negative in that. And actually, whether or not if we had maybe got a follow-up to that, which was in a similar kind of vein, whether or not that would have worked better than The Last Jedi with what we got.
I think when you look at that, I know we're talking about The Last Jedi, but when you think about The Last Jedi and think about how they rolled these films out, maybe that was just a bit too early to be so risky, to be so brave, to be so out there, because you just reintroduced Star Wars, and then we've had Rogue One, which couldn't be more tied to A New Hope.
Absolutely.
So that swells the old emotional nerves for everybody. And then The Last Jedi, which takes you back to the sequel trilogy era, was such a bold difference, tonally, stylistically, performance-wise. It's a very different film. I think so anyway.
Yeah.
And so it's not the same beast as The Force Awakens, and you wouldn't want it to be.
No, I think if they had done like a very similar second film to The Force Awakens, then I think we would have criticised, and I think there was I can remember some of the conversations that we may have had at the time and with other fans and stuff was the fact that it didn't feel very original, and actually we hope that the sequel was going to take it somewhere completely different, which it did. And I suppose on some levels, be careful what you wish for, Star Wars fans. But on another note entirely, you're watching that film and you're seeing how important Rey is, and the emphasis on that and stuff.
That really stood up to me though.
Yeah.
And it was the Mary Sue criticism back in the day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, how does she just figure these things out? When you actually watch that film again on the big screen, you're literally watching her figure it out in real time. She figures out how to use the blaster, how to get good with it. She figures out the mind trick. She figures out how to block Kylo's mental sort of attacks. She figures out how to fight him. And how we didn't see the Palpatine connection, because her lightsaber form is completely Revenge of the Sith Palpatine.
That's it. And I can remember conversations that there were people who were saying that, and at the time you're just like, nah. Don't know. You like,
it's Obi-Wan's daughter, or
exactly.
It's Luke's daughter, or whatever.
So, and whether or not, even then, you kind of think whether or not they had made that connection and they had that forethought. I mean, I would say no.
Yeah.
And that was just maybe a happy accident with that or something.
Yeah.
Kind of, for me, a little bit frustrating, because like you've got this film and it sets up so many amazing things, and yet I don't necessarily know if we got the payoff that we could have got with a single director for all three of the films of this trilogy.
Yeah.
So look, looks like we are at our destination. Yeah, cool. Wow, what a show we've had. It's almost like we've been away for a week and actually had to catch up on some news. But it's not. It's nice to have news, nevertheless. It means that things are happening in the Star Wars galaxy, and that means we've got more to talk about, and more to talk about next week. So thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully, if the planets align, we might have some listeners' questions next week. And if you want to send one in, you're welcome to do so. We love to hear from you. So Mark, can you let everybody know how we can get in touch?
I certainly can, and here's how you can do it.
Email radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for links to our social media feeds, Fantha Tracks TV and Fantha Tracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fantha Tracks intro, Blues Harvest for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock UK time. Our weekly news show Good Morning Tatooine goes live Sundays at 9 o'clock UK time on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fantha Tracks is absolutely free, so it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
And that's me done for this episode.
Brilliant. Thanks, mate. Well, look after yourself. Listeners, stay safe. Check us out on Instagram. Mr. Newbold is prefect_timing, and I am markbase_81. So send us a follow, drop us a DM. Until next week, everybody stay safe, take care, may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Collecting Tracks.